Okay, good morning, everyone. I think we can kick off now. We've got quite a few people who have come in. Welcome to today's session, which is the Workplace Skills Plans challenges that a lot of us face as SDFs. This period is quite a daunting time for companies, for SDFs, HR managers, training managers, and it can be very frustrating, especially when SETA systems are not working, when you're really struggling to get data from your clients or from divisions within the organization. And we're just going to discuss that and unpack all of that. And, you know, I really would like it to be an interactive session. So I'd appreciate it if everyone can send through any questions on the chat that you might have. I would like everyone just to remain muted. I think it can become a bit chaotic if we have questions coming in live with the voice coming through. So I'd like to keep it very conversational. I have got a presentation that I am going to go through. So I've structured it in a really good way in terms of where we will unpack just understanding what is your preparation in terms of your WSPs, and then going through the actual registration on the SETA systems. So let's jump into it, and please feel free. There's sections in the presentation where I will be taking a lot of questions. I would like to spend a lot more time on questions though, because that's really what this session is about. It's to understand what are the challenges that you guys are facing and how can I help you or guide you in overcoming those challenges with the WSP submissions. So to kick off, the agenda that we're going to be covering today is your WSP preparation. What are all the things that you need to go through before you actually start with your WSP compilation and gathering your data before you do the submission? We're going to go through profile registrations, SETA systems, and the various challenges. I think this year has really, it's in comparison to previous years, it's really been a mission. Everyone knows the service the SETA system issues, but just in general, I'm finding across a number of SETAs that there's a lot of challenges this year. I'm going to also go through template downloads, the supporting documentation that you need to get in place before you can submit your WSP. And then I'm going to touch on a bit on the mapping of the, I see that there's a lot of discussions that need to be had around how to map the OFO codes, but we'll jump into that when we get to that particular point. In terms of your WSP preparation, the most important thing is gathering your information. A lot of SDFs that I help during this process, or even just when dealing with companies, the number one issue that comes up right at the beginning, which a lot of SDFs don't think about, is the company's STL number. Because what tends to happen is when you start with your WSP, you automatically start with first engaging with the client, finding out or engaging with your different divisions if you are an internal SDF, or if you're a training manager or HR manager who's tasked with the responsibility of your WSP submission. So the first thing is to ensure that you obtain the STL number, the Skills Development Levy number. I have had countless times, and it happens all the time, every single year, where I have maybe a new client that comes in and says, please, can you assist us with our WSP? We are registered with mixed SETA. And when I look at the core business of the company, they do fit an IT, the core business of the company is IT related. But I'm often surprised when I then go into mixed SETA and try to put in the Skills Development Levy number to register a profile, or just to gain access to be able to capture their WSP information. And often I will find that I go onto the mixed SETA system and I punch in the STL number, and lo and behold, the company doesn't come up, or it pops up with that dreaded message saying, this company is not a registered stakeholder with mixed SETA. Luckily, I am registered across about 12 different SETAs. So instead of me going back to the client and informing them that, you know, you're not registered with the SETA, remember with clients, the reason that they bring an SDF on board is really because they don't understand the process. They don't have the time to capture all of this data. So they really rely on you as an SDF to make this process as seamless as possible for them. So instead of me going back to the client and asking them or informing them that you're not registered with the SETA, you know, if you think about it, if I had to say that to a client, they would say, well, what next? I don't know what I should be doing. So you as the STF should be guiding the client and guiding the process. And what I then do, instead of engaging with the SETA, because we all know that, you know, when trying to get information out of the SETA, it can take a couple of days. So what I do is I actually go and log into all of my profiles on the various SETA systems, and I plug in that company's SDL number. And in that way, I'm able to then pick up once it pops up and populates on one of the SETA systems. Most of the time, like 80% of the time, I find that the company sits with under services SETA. And you know, STFs then think, what do we do now? You know, like if this company is under services SETA, but they should be registered with mixed SETA, what do we do now? And often you try to reach out to the SETAs. And unfortunately, with COVID and with the pandemic and everyone having to work from home, it has been a huge challenge to get in contact with SETAs. A lot of SETA offices, the phone numbers, nobody's answering the phone. So it really becomes a stressful time. So it's important to try and pick up from the SETA systems. If you are registered with a few, plug in the STL number and see if you can pick up the company on another SETA system. Only if you're unable to pick it up on any other system, then I take the approach with the SETA. But what I actually do is I do send the initial email to the main SETA. So let's say, for example, we believe that the company should be sitting under mixed SETA. You can send an email to mixed SETA to the whoever is dealing with the WSPs, and just inquire with them and indicate that this is the company's levy number. Please, can you check? They are an IT company, but you're not picking them up on the system. All SETAs can check where a specific company is registered. They've got that information. They have access to that. I've had a number of occasions where SETA has responded to me and said to me that they're actually sitting under services SETA. So you can send that email off to the specific SETA that you think the company should be registered under, while you go and check the other systems to see if you can pick up the STL number. Moving on to the next point, which is confirm the company is registered with the correct SETA. So if you find that the company is not registered with the correct SETA and you manage to find out where they are sitting. So again, the example I'm using, if it's a mixed SETA client and an IT company, and they should be under mixed SETA, but they're sitting under services SETA, you have to submit the WSP to the SETA that they are currently registered with. Even though it's the incorrect SETA, you have to register. You have to submit the WSP to that particular SETA. The inter-SETA transfers take a while to go through. At the moment, based on last year, it's taken up to 12 months for some companies to go through the inter-SETA transfer. So in terms of the WSP, you have to submit to the SETA that the company is currently registered with. And the reason for that is, even though it's the incorrect one, once the submission has gone through, and let's say the inter-SETA transfer only goes through 8 months down the line, what will then happen is that when you're registered with the new SETA that you're supposed to be with, so in the example, if you now move over to mixed SETA, and you, for example, want to apply for funding, remember with applying for discretionary grant funding, one of the main criteria is that the SETA's first priority will be to check, have you submitted a workplace skills plan? And obviously they will pick up that you haven't submitted anything to them, but they will request proof that you submitted to the SETA that you were initially registered with. And as long as you can provide that proof, you will be eligible to be able to apply for the discretionary grant funding. So just, even though it's the incorrect SETA, ensure that you submit your WSP to the SETA that the company is currently registered with. Then in terms of applying for the inter-SETA transfer, once you've completed the process of the WSP submission for that company, then go and do the application for the inter-SETA transfer. It's very important that you do explain this to the company and to your clients, because they don't understand what an inter-SETA transfer is. They don't understand why do they need to do an inter-SETA transfer. So it's important for you as the STF to be able to explain that. And in my experience, what has happened when a company is sitting with the incorrect SETA, the problem lies with when that company was registered with SARS. And it's no fault of the company or whoever the owners of the company was that registered, or the accountants that registered that company for the first time. What tends to happen is when a company gets registered, either the tax consultant, the accountant, the owner approaches SARS and registers the business. And when they do that registration, what the SARS consultant does is they will request from the business, what is your core activities within the organization? And a SARS consultant has no idea which SETA they should be allocated to. So they automatically assume that if it's not very straightforward, so if it is not an IT company or a company in construction, then they would just allocate it to service a SETA. If they can pick up that it's a construction company or it's in IT or energy, then they would most likely then allocate you to construction, manufacturing, mixed SETA or EW SETA if that's the one that they select. But nobody is guiding that SARS consultant in terms of which SETA they must go to. So I always advise companies, especially when they have just started out and they're getting all their registrations in place, I actually tell them to make sure that when they do the registration, they check with the SARS consultant, what is the SETA code that they are being allocated to? And rather stop that process at that particular point if it's the incorrect SETA that they were looking to allocate the company to. But again, companies who are doing WSPs have often been registered for more than 10 years or 5 years. So nobody remembers who actually did the registration. And you then just have to follow the inter-SETA transfer process in order to transfer that company to the SETA that they should be sitting with. I just want to check if there are any questions in terms of the process of gathering information. Okay. No questions as yet, so I'll continue then. With regards to the SETA systems, before you even get to the SETA systems, what I do, because on a yearly basis we submit over around about 21, 22 WSPs for a range of different companies that sit across various SETAs, and the profile of the company ranges between 5 employees right up to about 1,000 employees. So it's important that at the very start of engagement with your client, that you establish the number of employees that are within that organization, so you can already start planning how much time needs to be spent on this particular client. I also, because all the different SETAs have their own requirements in terms of data that they need to be uploaded into the system, I have a generic template that I've designed, and that's a template that I would then send out to clients and have them complete information. And what that template entails is just company information, so basic company information like what is the company's name, the registered name, what is the STL number, because you need that information in order to register on the SETA system. I also request to know who is the main contact person that needs to be displayed on the system when you're capturing the company information. Melissa, I see you've raised your hand. I will come to your question now. I'll just go through this particular slide and then I'll come to your question. So in terms of with the company information, you also want to request what is the annual payroll that was paid over the last financial period, because a lot of SETA systems do ask this information. And the second tab, we then have an employee tab, and that has all of the columns that you need to be able to capture the employee's data. So those columns include items like the employee's ID number, the race, the gender, the occupation, because remember you have to do the OFO mapping. So I have an OFO mapping column within that template, but I highlight it because we don't want to stress the company out. They have no idea what is an OFO code most of the time. So I generally state to them that they do not have to fill that section in, but we do need to know what the occupation is of every single employee. So that makes our job easier when we need to map the OFO codes. The other information that I would then also add in there is the birth date. Some systems, some SETA systems like the MQA system, they often want the actual birth year when you're inputting the data of the employee, which becomes a bit frustrating. So sometimes it's easier to have another column that reflects the birth year. Even though you can pull that, if you're good with Excel, you can put a formula in the Excel spreadsheet and generate extract the year and the birth date from the ID number. Then other information that we need to have is, so what I normally do is I ask a company to indicate in the period, the reporting period, so most of SETA's reporting periods are from April last year, 1 April last year to 31st of March this year for annual training. And the WSP is from 1 April to 31st of March next year. So I would normally indicate to them on the employee profile, when they need to highlight in red who are the employees that have left the company, that are no longer with the company after the 1st of March. And it's important that you ask this question, because what tends to happen is a company just does not include that person's information. And when you now start capturing the data, you realize that there's somebody sitting under past training that's not on the employee list. And now you start to frantically try and figure out who is this person, where do they come from? And then the back and forth engagement starts with the client again. And we want to really minimize the back and forth that you can have with a client during this process. You need to try and get as much information at the beginning before you actually start with the capturing and the verifying of the data. So important, highlight to them what is the reporting period for that specific SETA, and please can they highlight in red which of the employees are no longer with that organization, and when was their termination date? So when did they actually leave the organization? So you are, as the SDF, are able to then identify, was this person, did they go on training last year? And do I need to actually record them as part of the employee list? Then I also ask them to add in green, especially if it's a client that I've submitted in the previous year. I ask them to include and highlight in green any new employees that are going to be starting with the organization. So that might sound a bit strange, but if you think about it, if you started the process of your WSP compilation within the month of February, and you're ready to submit by the end of Feb, but the company knows that they still have new employees that are going to be employed from 1st of March, you need to record those people because the reporting period says it's until 31st of March. So these are little things that you have to be aware of, because if you don't include that type of data, it can skew the information within the WSP. So it's important just to keep note of these little elements that can creep in. Then once you've got all of your employee information, we move on to the past training and the planned training. And there again, I also have columns where I'm specifically highlighting who is the employee that went on the training. We map that back to the employee list. You then also need to check what is the past training. So get the name of the actual training program. Have a column that asks, is this training accredited? Also have a column that asks the NQF level, because some SETA systems require that information. Again, if I'm thinking about like MQA, for example, the mining SETA, they require information on what is the program that the person went on, and what is the NQF level. So it's important. And also they request to know, is this a pivotal training? So is it accredited or is it not accredited training? And you need to have that information. Again, it's to reduce the back and forth with the client. Also have the cost of the course. So the company needs to give you what was the cost of that particular training course. They also need to indicate I normally ask for invoices, sorry, not invoices, I ask for certificate of attendance as part of the supporting documentation, as well as proof of payments, because, and sometimes I request an invoice. If it's services SETA, I do request an invoice, because sometimes they require that as part of the supporting documentation. So those are basically the columns that I have in my template, and it just makes it much easier for me to get all of the information at the beginning, work through that data, do the mapping, and then see if there's any information that is, is not verified. Like if there's a column where some information is missing, for example, like it's not showing the NQF level of a specific program, then you can go back to the client, have one email that details exactly what information is missing. So you've only technically have one or two conversations with the client during the process. With the SETA systems, you also need to ensure that you get the STF appointment letter. So even if you've been submitting the WSP for that client for the past 2-3 years, the system will always ask you to upload the STF appointment letter. There are certain systems which will have your details as the STF and you don't have to do that. But when I send through the template, I send the appointment letter. And again, to make the process easier, I actually draft an STF appointment letter, and I send that to the client and say to them, please copy and paste this directly onto your letterhead and sign it, send it back to me so that you can immediately start the process of registering a profile on the SETA system. What I find with a lot of STFs is that they tend to go and get all of the data from the client, start working through that data, and they spend about 1 to 2, 3 weeks working on the data before they've even gone and registered on the system. So the reason I say it's very important to actually do that registration the minute you get the STL number is because you don't want to spend a whole month working on the WSP for this particular client on your template that you have, or if you're using the template of the SETA, and then in the month of, let's say by the 1st of April, you then want to go onto the system and you now realize that this company actually is not registered with that SETA. Then panic sets in. So always start the SETA registration process at the time that you start engaging with the client once you receive that STL number, so you can sort out any system issues that may arise from there. So I'm going to stop now and just go through to the chat. I know that there was a question. Oh, sorry, Melissa. Yes, it was an error. Is there any other questions at this particular point? No questions. Wow, guys. Okay. I thought that you would have tons of questions today, but I'll continue through the presentation. So with the system, it's important to check for template downloads. And the reason that I say it's important to check for, okay, sorry, Melissa, can you maybe advise on whether a company can have a primary and a secondary STF? Very good question. So yes, a lot of SETA systems do ask for the primary STF's information to be inserted, and if there is a secondary STF. It's entirely up to you. So it depends also on your relationship with the client. With all of my clients, I think I really have one that is a primary and a secondary STF. The only time you would have a primary and secondary STF is if the client would really like to understand the process of the WSP submission and they want to be alerted of whatever you are busy with within the system and when you do the submission. So when you input the primary information of the STF, that should be your details because you are the primary STF who is going to be submitting the WSP. The secondary STF would just be able to go into the system and view what is happening in the system. Most of the time, clients don't really go into the systems. But in my case, I try to do a lot of transfer of skills over to my clients. So I teach them how to do the WSPs. And people often think and say to me, why would you do that? Because you're basically killing work for yourself. And I'm not actually, because even though I'm teaching someone how to do the WSP and hopefully they can do it by themselves, because the WSP submissions is once a year, they work on the system now and next year they completely forget about that. So you still have to guide them. So don't think that you're killing work for yourself if you're teaching someone how to do the WSP. So the secondary STF is really the company contact that you're dealing with. You can put their information in there and they then gain access to the system. I know that SETA system does allow you to put a secondary STF. They then they would get an alert from the system, an email that would come through to them, and they have to activate their own profile and they would have their own login details. Now, very important, this is why I don't put secondary STFs, is because often people forget passwords, especially for SETA systems. So it's important that you as the STF make sure that you have a login details for the specific system and you keep that on your side, but also SETA systems require you to update passwords. I think it's every 2nd to 3rd month, you need to update the password. What I do to keep things running smoothly, especially since we are submitting for such a large amount of companies, I actually have a password system where I've got all of the SETAs listed. I have all of my profiles. So when I say profiles, I might have a company that has different different branches, and they might have different entities in the organization that has their own STL number. So in my password document, I list the SETA that the WSP has to be submitted to, the levy number, what is the email address that is registered on that particular company's profile. I then have the password. I have a column that actually indicates when last was the password updated. So when we have a system that requires us to update the password, I would then go and just update the information of that particular password in my template, so that when I need to access the system again, I always have the most updated password on my document. I also, at the end of the WSP submission, I normally would give the password to clients, but that is only if I've registered the profile in the company's name. So remember, as an SDF, you can either submit a number of WSPs under your own profile, or you can submit directly using the company's profile. So an example, under Services SETA, I have my own profile under Services SETA as an SDF, and I have about 6 companies that's linked to my profile, and I submit on their behalf on a yearly basis. I don't give that password details to any of the clients, because obviously they'd be able to see other clients' information, and because of the POPI Act now that's coming in July, you definitely cannot be sharing personal information of other clients to clients. So it's important that if it is your SDF profile, you need to make sure that that particular password details you don't give through to anyone else. If it is a client that you know that you do this WSP, or it's the first time you're doing the WSP, you'll be able to establish if it is something that you're going to be doing for them on a yearly basis, or if they really are going to be able to submit the WSP going forward. In those cases, and you have some clients who will say, please, we want the login details. Then you create the profile. When you register it, you ensure that the login details you hand over to that particular company, and you don't have any other clients that are registered under that specific profile. I just want to take another question here. From Sharon, what happens if you submitted a WSP last year and ATR for last year, but because of COVID, a lot of training did not take place? Will that affect the WSP submission for this year? Very good question, Sharon. So with WSPs, what happens is if you indicated that you're going to do 10 different training interventions in your plan last year, and now when you're reporting, you only did, let's say you did 0 training sessions, I think that SETAs will have no choice, and I might be taken down for this, but I think that last year and this year, SETAs, the WSP submissions should be taken into consideration in terms of COVID. A lot of companies would have been impacted, and a lot of training would not have taken place. And SETAs need to understand this. And I think as ASDSA, it is something that we can engage with SETAs on. Because a lot of companies were not unable to. I've got a number of clients who were unable to do training that they had planned to do. In previous years, SETAs would reject your WSP if you deviated more than 20% from what you said you were going to train. This year, I think that should any SDF who submits a WSP and that WSP is rejected on the basis that training did not take place, I think you have all the right to debate that with the SETA. Because of COVID, it was a very unique situation last year. So I think you need to debate that, and you need to debate it very strongly with the SETA if they reject your WSP. I'm ready for the fight. So if there are any SETAs who are going to reject because some of my clients have not done any training in last year, then I'm definitely going to be debating that with the SETA. I think also one of the things that you should engage with your clients on, which I've been doing with my clients this year, is that even though training didn't take place physically, I've asked them the question, has any training taken place online? And a lot of them have said, yes, we've actually had some training that has taken place online, but we don't have any registers. And what you can then do as an SDF is assist the company to create a register for that training. They will, most of them do record their Zoom sessions or their team sessions if they have done training online, because they just want to keep that for their records. So what you can do is ask them to just go and look at the recording, and if they can just send through information on who all in the company actually attended that particular online session, and create a register and have everyone sign that particular register, and that can be your register as proof for that training actually took place. So don't discard online training. Online training, it is training that has taken place, and you can create a register for that. So very important to check in with your clients if they have done any online training. I just want to check if there's any more questions. Some SETAs require deviation motivation letter. Yes, Bridget, that's also very true. MERS SETA is one of the SETAs that require deviation motivation letter. In the past, I've never had a MERS SETA reject any of my clients where I actually had submitted that deviation motivation letter. What a deviation motivation letter is, it's a letter just stating that, this is the reasons we've deviated from our plan in terms of the training that we had set out. And there could be a number of reasons. And I'm going to tell you that one trick to get around if a company just didn't do any of the training and they can't really give a solid reason, the different reasons that you can help your client with is stating that they had where in certain cases there might have been a restructure within the organization, so training had to be re-looked at, and some training might have not taken place. The company might have gone through a financial slump or had some financial challenges, so training didn't take place. There might have been some disruptions. COVID was a massive disruption, so I think that in terms of reasons for deviation is definitely that the pandemic had a part to play. A lot of companies were working from home. In last year's submission, I had a huge challenge where, when we got to the end of the WSP submission, where we had to get signatures from different people, whether they were a union representative or they were a HR manager, financial manager, whoever had to sign off on the WSP. They were sitting at home and working from home, but they didn't have access to a printer or a scanner. And that posed a challenge. So I engaged with the SETA and said to them, look, we are unable to submit at this particular period, but please allow us, because of COVID, some of the employees don't have printers at home. They need to get to an internet cafe or somewhere where they can actually print it out, sign it, and scan it in. What I also done was I helped my clients with this particular issue. I had them, I took a picture of the especially the ones that didn't have any scanners or printers. I took a picture of the page that they had to sign. I WhatsApped that picture to them. They signed it, WhatsApp back to me, and I then printed that on my side. So there's ways to get around it, guys. You don't have to just stop and that's the role of a consultant and the role of an SDF is think creatively, think outside of the box, help your client to make this process really, really easy for them. So WhatsApp works great. You can take pictures. You as the SDF should be able to get to an internet cafe or a post net where you can actually go and print and have a document scanned. So really you need to make it easy for your clients. Okay, I just want to check, please, so from Bridget, please can you advise of any further developments on the court ruling that BUSA got to increase the mandatory grant rebate from 20% back to 50%? Bridget, that one is definitely not going to happen. It's been going on for a number of years now, and I think that we have to all accept that it's never going to change back to 50%. It will definitely just remain on 20%. While I'm on that particular question, please do check in with your clients. As an SDF, it's important that once you've submitted your WSP on behalf of your company, it's your role to track that WSP gets approved. So keep tracking. Look, SETAs normally take about 2 to 3 months to send through the approval. If you have not received anything by the 3rd month, so submissions are due by end of April, May, June, July. If by end of July you've not received any feedback from the SETA in terms of your approval of your WSP, check in with the SETA. Put it into your diary that you need to check in with the SETA if what is happening with your WSP that you've submitted. I often find that sometimes things fall through the cracks because SETAs have an enormous amount of WSPs that come through to them. And sometimes things do fall through the cracks. So just check in with your SETA, make sure that they are where you have submitted and you're awaiting that approval letter. Then, very important, it's something that you also need to check with your clients. So the first payment, mandatory grant payment that normally comes through is around August, September. It's important to check in with your client if they have received a payment with regards to the mandatory grant. I'm finding across a number of my clients that they've not received any mandatory payments to them. And it's my role now to go back to the SETA and say, please, can you send me a recon of what was paid to this company, when was it paid, because it's important for you to go back to the company and say that there maybe was an issue with banking details on the SETA system, even though you might have uploaded the banking account, the account confirmation letter. For some reason, SETA systems are very finicky, so they might not have updated banking details. So it's important to just make sure that you do have an idea of whether the company has received the mandatory grants. I'm just going to check again. So sorry, Bridget. Yes, I doubt it's ever going to go back to 50%. There was a 4-month SDL payment holiday. Possibly the SETAs would take it into account when assessing if an entity achieved the 60% required percentage of training implemented on the ATR. So yes, there was a payment holiday, but that payment holiday doesn't impact your training at all. So even though there was a payment holiday, that was just a holiday where companies did not have to pay the SDL levy. It has no impact on training. So your training should have taken place. If it didn't take place, back to what I said earlier in terms of what is your motivation and your reason as to why training didn't take place. But yes, it definitely does not have anything to do with the SDL payment. Cheryl Ann, with the deviation letter, must one submit proof as well? Example, the restructure? No, you don't have to submit any proof. SETA, for example, has always accepted the deviation letter and whatever the reasons are there. If they do request supporting evidence, you can then provide that to them. But I've never ever in all the years of submitting WSPs, I've never had any SETA come back and say, we want proof that as to why, if it was restructuring, we want proof that the restructuring took place. As long as your deviation letter is worded correctly, and you're welcome to contact me after the session if you want me to check your deviation letters, I'm happy to do that. But I've never had a request for proof to be submitted. Okay, so I'm going to pause there now. I think that is the last questions on that particular discussion. I want to just continue because I'm just aware of time. We've got 20 minutes left. So with regards to the SETA systems, we've gone through all of this on this particular slide. In terms of the SETA systems, I know there's going to be a lot of questions that's going to start coming out from this. So I'd want to touch on the services SETA system first, because unfortunately the services SETA system has been plagued with a lot of issues and issues going across every single division or everything that you want to be able to do on the system. I've experienced system issues in terms of just logging into the LMIS. End of last year not end of last year, in beginning of last year. And actually throughout the whole of last year, there was major issues with just trying to gain access to the system. So I want to unpack the services SETA systems issues that a lot of you might have been experiencing. I definitely experienced a lot of issues last year. Now, if you cannot access your profile, and what I mean by this is the login screen, when you go in to log in, if it is the first time that you are logging in for a while now, you haven't maybe gone into the system since last year, and you log in and you're putting in your login details and you know that details are correct, and it's giving you an error message saying that the profile is not active on the system, please make sure that you email, and I've put up 3 email addresses there. Please send the email to all 3 of those email addresses, and you need to hound the SETA. If there's an issue with you being able to log in, you need to make sure that you take a screenshot. Just make sure that you send them your login details, so the username and the password, so that they can check it on their side. What happened a lot last year was when I had put my details in my login details and it would give that error, I would go and choose forgot password. The system would then send the login details to me. And when I look at the login details, it's exactly the same username and password that I'm putting in, but I still cannot access the system. And I won't lie to you, it's taken about 4 to 5 months just for that issue to be resolved. I must say that I think because of the WSP submissions now, the LMIS, there's now responses coming from them. So I do have a direct contact in LMIS if anyone is struggling, and I can definitely give that through to you. I don't want to put it on a public platform like this, but I can definitely give that through to you. And they really have started helping out with sorting out those issues. All of my login details have now been resolved. So that's why I stress the point again. If you are starting your process with your client and the WSP compiling of all the data, your first step, go and register on the services on the SETA system so that you can check, are you able to gain access? If there's a challenge, you need to start engaging with the SETA now already. We are in March, so it's important to start that process now. If it is your first time registering on the services SETA system, what will happen is you'll go in, put in your details to register on the system. Very important, save your password and your username somewhere, because you're going to need to use that login details later. It does send you an email. When you register for the first time, you'll receive an email, and in that email, it's going to give you an activation code. What you need to do then is go back to the login, input your password and your username, and when you go into the system, it's going to ask you for that activation code. Copy and paste that activation code directly from your email into the system, and the system should then open for you. So please, guys, I can't stress enough, make sure that you register on the systems at the very beginning, especially with services SETA, so that you can gain access to the system. Thanks. I see Angelique has put the email addresses into the chat. Then when you go into the SETA system, so this happens a lot. When you log onto the services SETA, and it still happens to me, when you log onto services SETA's website and you click on the LMIS link, which will take you to the system where you need to go and submit the WSP, this box tends to pop up. Whatever you do, do not click OK. Just click cancel. Once you click OK, some funny bugs come into the system and it picks up your browser and your IP address. And when you try to go into the LMI system again, you're just going to have continuous problems. You have to then go and clear all your cookies, clear your history, and go and try and get into the LMI system again. This message will pop up, click cancel. You have to click cancel, and it then allows you into the system. This is just some of the tricks that I've learned over the years of dealing with the services SETA system. The next section is also very important, especially for SDFs who have multiple profiles and multiple logins on the services SETA system. I have a range of different login details on the services SETA system. I log in on behalf of training providers. I log in on behalf of employers. I log in as skills development facilitators under my profile, as well as companies' profiles. So it's very important, the minute you capture your username, the system will immediately highlight what is your role in this particular profile. If you know that you are submitting the WSP, it has to pop up with skills development facilitator. If it doesn't pop up with skills development facilitator, it means that when you registered on the system, or when the company registered on the system, they chose the incorrect profile specifically for the WSP. If that has happened, it's not a problem. You don't, I know most of you will probably go back to the SETA and try and get advice on how does this get fixed. A simple thing to do is go onto the system, go and register a whole new profile. Remember, the email address must be different to the one that you initially used here. Use a different email address and then register as skills development facilitator. It would then create a profile for your client, and that will be specific to your WSP submission. So please make sure that when you're registering for the first time, you choose skills development facilitator and not employer, because a lot of people think you have to choose the employer. Just make sure you choose the skills development facilitator. Then the next screen will open up. Now, if you are a seasoned SDF who has been using the WSP system for a while now, sorry, the services SETA system for a while to submit WSPs, you will come to this particular screen, which has the WSP summary and the company registrations. Now, this is my profile. Because I submit on a yearly basis to services SETA for a number of companies, if I had to go and click on WSP summary, what would happen is it would actually open my history, and it will show all of the WSPs that I've submitted in the past couple of years. And it will also show some of my new WSPs that I'm in the process of capturing. That is under the WSP summary. If it is the first time that you are going to be submitting a WSP for a company, you would then need to click on company registration. I also just want to point out, when you get to this page, you need to make sure that you click edit and check that you've captured all of the information here required for the SDF. There's quite a number of information here. So have you been trained in the use of the services SETA sector specific career guide? That question has been there for a number of years. That question holds no ground, to be honest. I always put in no, and it doesn't really mean anything. To me, I don't work with the services sector specific career guides. I don't even think that they really have career guides anymore. I think it's just a historic, well, I might be mistaken, but I think it's a historic field that's in there. Have you been on any of the services SETA STF training? No, my answer is no, I haven't been on any of their training. I don't need to go on any of that training. How long have you been in the field of skills development? So you put in the number of years. It asks you, when was the recent year that you went on STF training? The bottom section, how long have you been in the field of skills development? Number of years and number of months. You can put the number of years and number of months in there. Once you click on company registration, it will take you to this tab. Now, this is a very important tab because this is your pre-application process. I have a few people that have contacted me and freaked out because they don't know what is this. They're too scared to submit application here because they think that it's going to submit the WSP, and they want to check, but where I'm not capturing any of my training information. Please understand, with the services SETA, this is a pre-application process. All you have to do here is type in the company's STL number. Now, again, very important, services SETA system has a lot of glitches in it. When you start typing the STL number in here, it must start with L. And also when you're typing the STL number in there, type it in very slowly. Because what tends to happen with the services SETA system is when you're typing it in, it automatically just erases it. And you try and type again and it just automatically erases. So type it in slowly and you'll see that if you put L67 and you see the 6 comes up, the 7 slowly starts coming up, and then it automatically wants to fill in the next digits. Slowly input your digits. When you get to the end, the company should then appear under trading name. Their details will be populated here. If it doesn't populate and it continues to not take in that levy number, it means the company is not registered with services SETA. That's when you then send off your email to services SETA and ask them, can they please check if this STL number is registered with services SETA, and if you are registered on other systems, go in and put your STL number in there and check if it comes up on any other SETA system. Very important, in which industry is this company involved? So there you can just indicate, is it recruitment, is it property, whatever industry they are particularly in. What is the main business of the company? So again, because I don't want to go back and forth with the client, if I would go on, if it's a new client, I would go onto their website, look at what is their service offering. I'd look at what is the about page. So I'll look at what do they do, and I would just copy and paste in there. If I'm not 100% sure and it's not clear on their company website, then I'll go back to the client and say, please, can you just advise on what is your core activities of the business? And you then put that in there. Training done in previous financial year, you can choose yes or you can choose no. If there was no training done, the system might not allow you to go forward. If it doesn't allow you to go forward, just put in yes. And when you get to the point where you have to upload your supporting documentation, all you need to do is draft a letter on the company needs to have it on the company letterhead, and you can state, due to the pandemic, no training was scheduled in the previous year, and you upload that letter, because that's a way to trick the system by showing that you have uploaded a document, but it might not be the correct document. But it is a letter stating why training hasn't taken place. Because remember, as an STF, your main purpose is to get the WSP submitted. And sometimes you need to just trick the system to be able to submit it. And you can then have discussions with the SETA in terms of if they want to reject it based on training that maybe didn't take place. Your appointment letter, very important. You can't move anywhere in the system to any of these tabs if the appointment letter hasn't been uploaded. It has to be on the company letterhead, and it must state that they are appointing you as the STF on their behalf to do the WSP. There are other fields further down, which is just general details of the company, the address. What I also do with most SETA systems is I put my details as the company contact. And I put my email address. The reason for that is what tends to happen is the system will send emails through to that email address. And you'll be sitting waiting for your client to send you and to forward the email onto you. And often it ends up in their spam folder, or it comes through to them and they have no idea what it is and they just delete it. So if you've put the company's email address in, you need to alert them and inform them, please look out for an email that would come from Services SETA and kindly forward that on to me so that you can continue with the process. So in the pre-application process, you've got your main company details that you will insert. Make sure that you save it. Provincial profile is just indicating if your company, your client has more than one branch that is scattered over South Africa, you then just need to input the number of branches that they have. So Cape Town, Durban, PE, you would put all of that, and it does ask you how many employees in each of those branches. Very important, further down on the screen, there is a question that asks, what is the number of employees? What is the permanent number? What is the temporary number? So in terms of permanent, that is the number of employees that the company is paying STL for, and that will be on the payroll. If they are contract or temporary employees, you can put that number in. It doesn't impact on anything when you're doing the submission. But very important, if you put in that in total there's 60 employees in this organization, and you now go to the provincial profile and you have 3 branches, and if the total of those 3 branches don't add up to 60, the system is going to give you an error. So make sure that whatever number of employees you've input on this main company page tallies up with the provincial profile if there are a few different divisions. Training committee, it's the training committee. If the company has more than 50 employees, go and input the training committee details there. Hard to fill vacancies. The system used to allow you to be able to skip this, but you have to put this in now. So for most companies, they don't have hard to fill vacancies. I would just put a general one in the hard to fill vacancies. Skills gaps, also system doesn't allow you to move forward if you haven't put a skills gap. So I would also generally put a very common one, which might be under customer service, that there might be a skills gap there, and a skills gap might be a computer related skills gap. So it might be just something that we need to train them on a system. So these two elements here, you need to try to figure out, check with the company first, show them the drop-down list, what are the options they have to choose from, and then you can capture it. If the company has no idea or they don't have hard to fill vacancies, there is a little tick that you can put in where it says the company has no hard to fill vacancies. When you get to submit application, there will actually be a few tick boxes for all of these: main company, provincial profile, training committee, hard to fill vacancies, and skills gaps. If you don't have a tick in any of these, you won't be able to submit the pre-application. If there is a tick for all of them, simply hit submit application. What the system will do is it will send you an email stating that you have submitted your pre-application. Some people think it's the actual WSP. It's not the actual WSP. Come back in and log into the system, and you'll then see that the system opens up and you can start capturing your employees, your training, past training, which is your ATR, and your planned training, the WSP training. So I'm just going to stop there because I see there's a number of questions that have come in. I heard from one SETA workshop that the mandatory grant is only payable in the second time of the WSP submission. It is across, is this all across all the SETAs? So yes, because remember the first time you're submitting a WSP, the SETA can't establish whether you have done any training in the previous year. So in the second year is a true reflection of have you implemented your plan. So yes, I do know that a lot of SETAs have started taking this approach. So if it is the first time they are submitting, they can expect the mandatory grant to only start being paid out in the following year. Still having that exact same problem. Have sent them an email today again. Thanks, Sharon. I think that's what the login details. Yeah, you know, you can just pop me a mail and I'll send you the details of the person that managed to resolve my issue. Like I said, I don't want to put that person's details on a public platform. Tokozani, does anyone have problems with the ETDP, SETA, and DCM system? I have to submit my own WSP and another company under ETDP, so I will be checking that system within the next week. You're welcome to drop me an email, and once I get into the system, I can check to see if there is an issue, and I can just inform you if I manage to get around that system issue. Shrill Ann. Oh, sorry. Okay, you're just answering that question there. How do I check if my WSP was approved on Services SETA? I know with WR SETA once one can check the status from submitted to approved. Yes. So what has happened with the services SETA in previous years, they had no way of actually, if you go onto the system, it just shows that it's been submitted. The system does, however, show that it's been approved. You as the SDF needs to actually engage with the SETA. So what I realized last year is that, services SETA tends to not tell stakeholders everything for some reason. So what I did last year, there was a number of my clients who needed the approval letter specifically for BEE. And I just popped them an email and I said to them, we need an approval letter. And they emailed us an approval letter, which I was very surprised for, because previously they never used to send any approval letters. So you can just pop an email to the WSP email address and you can ask them, once you see that it is approved on the system, if they can please send that through to you, the approval letter. Also, what I noticed last year in the system is that before, when you submitted your WSP and it was approved and you downloaded the WSP, it had draft written across there. What I realized last year is that you're now able to actually download the approved WSP. So that helps with the proof to show that it has been approved. But you can actually request from Services SETA now a letter stating that the WSP has been approved. We are instructed to report on employees as at 29th of Feb. However, we have many instances where we had employees join and get terminated in the same year, but prior to the 29th of Feb. They've been on training during their said employment period. However, this training is now omitted from the reporting as they no longer appear on the employee list. How do we handle that? So if you have an employee who left the company but did attend training, go and you need to add them on the employee list, because in every SETA system, you're not going to be able to report on them if they're not sitting on the employee list. So it does seem as though it's sort of skewed information where your total number of employees might be 50, but with that terminated person, it's now 51. And this is something you need to explain to your client, because they might question, why is there 51 employees? And you need to explain to them that because of the reporting period, we have to report on past training. And that particular employee sits under past training. The system records them and pulls the information based on an ID number. So if they are not sitting on the employee list, you're not going to be able to report on them. So please make sure that you do include them on the employee list. Sylvia, it seems that Services SETA are now asking for the declaration and verification to be signed and submitted instead of the SDF appointment letter. And it must be this year's declaration and verification form. So yes, Sylvia, actually the Services SETA system asks for both. For you to be able to, in the screen that I'm currently in now, for you to be able to move forward in the pre-application phase from saving the main company details, you have to upload your SDF appointment letter. That then opens up the rest of these tabs for you to capture. When you submit the pre-application and you now get into the WSP, there is a tab that says download declaration and verification. Download that declaration and verification from the system. Get your client to sign now already. Let them submit your the bank letter that must be stamped by the bank, because all of this has to be uploaded as supporting documentation. So there's the SDF appointment letter and the declaration and verification letter that must be uploaded. So please note that both of them apply. I see Cheryl-Ann asking for the declaration and verification template. There isn't a template. You have to go and complete your pre-application process, because what happens when you get into the WSP section and you click on download, it downloads with all of the company's details in there. So there's no generic template. That DNV is actually reflecting the company's levy number, and it reflects who needs to sign on there. So you have to download that from the system. It's not really a new thing in the system. It has been in there in the previous years. Okay, I've covered all the questions. Gosh, we're on 11 o'clock already. So I'm going to just jump quickly through. You're welcome to stay on or leave the session, but I am going to just continue through the presentation. I know we're at 11 o'clock. Mixed SETA registration. So just another example I wanted to give is, if you're registering for the first time on Mixed SETA, make sure that you enter in what is the profile that you're using. If it's for WSP submission, make sure that you click the SDF. Most SETA systems will have guides available, so you'll be able to download a guide and go through the process in understanding how to register on the system and how to use the system. We've just covered Q&A there. So the template downloads, you'll see that in every single SETA system, there are download templates that you're able to download. And this is really to make your life easier, because if you have a lot of employees, for example, that you need to capture into the system, you don't want to physically capture each and every one of them. There's always a template that you can download from the system. You have to really look at the screen, because some systems are really, they have a small link on the system, and sometimes it's easy to miss them. So make sure that you check for those templates and you make use of those templates. I just want to show you. So this is SETA, and within SETA, you'll see here downloads. Click here to download the template or import the file. Now this, when you look at the screen, it's enlarged here, but when you're in the system, you'll actually see that this click here is very, very small, and it's very easy. I actually missed it a few times. So be sure that you check that. If you download that section, it will download the template for you. You can capture all of them, the employees' details, and then you come back in and you click import from Excel, and you'll then be able to import all of your employees' information. This is mixed SETA. So again, mixed SETA, for every tab that they have here, when you need to go and capture information, they have a download template button. This is across most SETA, so always look out for this download template. And you can then download it, capture all of your information, and click choose file, and then begin upload. Now what happens is a lot of the SETA systems will spit out an error, a log error text file. Go in there and it will, or an Excel file, it will show you where are the errors. And sometimes it's a small thing like you maybe copy and pasted a municipality where you should have chosen a drop down. So it's important just to check those things and see what is the error actually showing. And most of them will show you which line that error occurs. So which line of the employee that particular error occurs. Your supporting documentation at the end of your WSP submission, make sure that you request these types of documents from your client at the beginning or halfway through the process. A bank stamp letter cannot be older than 3 months. Make sure that it has the bank stamp on. FNB letter, bank account letters has a unique number at the top. So SETAs will accept FNB letters without the stamp. All other banks has to have the original stamp on. Your declaration and verification letters must be uploaded. Training committee minutes must be uploaded. If your company has not had a committee meeting, please make sure that they have the meeting so that you can record that and have your minutes, type up the minutes so that you can submit it as supporting documents, especially for companies with more than 50. If you don't have training minutes and it's bigger than 50 employees, your WSP will be rejected. Some SETA systems require training invoices and proof of payments. There's the motivation letter for deviation, which some SETAs require. Motivation for non-NQF aligned training. Most SETA system requires this in the past years. And all you need to state there is that it is training that the company required for their employees, which is vital to the role they fulfill within the organization. And it is not NQF aligned. They normally accept that. They just want to know what is the reason that you've done non-NQF aligned training. And then be sure that all WSPs you normally have to print out the approval page and get that signed and upload it to the SETA systems. If you don't have that particular page, your WSP might be rejected, but I think SETAs are a bit more lenient in that. They have allowed, they do actually come back to you as an SDF and say to you a month or 2 months down the line that please can you submit your signed WSP, or please can you submit a bank stamped letter. So sometimes they don't really just reject WSPs, they do come back and ask you for this information. And then OFO mapping, what is the version we're using? 2019. Please make sure you use the 2019 version. If you check all your SETA systems, you will be able to download this version from most of their websites or their systems. Some SETA systems, I think there might be 1 or 2 that are still using the previous 2017 version, but as far as I know, all of them that I work on are using the 2019 version. So that is the end. Let me just quickly check if there are any more questions. What do we do regarding the Dooming Poppy Act compliance required? Your companies have to become compliant. As an SDF, You need to make sure that your processes are compliant as well. I'm going through a POPI process, so if anyone needs details of a consultant that can assist you with getting your POPI compliance, please let me know. He's very reasonable. Because we're dealing with companies' personal information, we need to make sure that we have certain documents that the company signs to ensure that whatever we're basically stating that the information and the data they are sharing with us will purely be used for the WSP submissions and nothing else. So it's very important that you do comply with POPI. Look, we don't have to comply right now, but from 1st of July, we need to make sure that we are all compliant. Okay, thank you guys. I know we've gone over the time, but thank you so much. It's been a great session. Thank you for all your questions and hope to see you at the next session. I will look at queries coming in, and if there is some requesting a session on specific topics, please send me an email requesting specific topics that you'd like to discuss. Thank you so much and enjoy the day, and good luck with your WSP submissions.